We almost hit our timing perfectly. We're just 1 minute behind. Hope you all are feeling good. I am feeling excellent after a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Happy Thanksgiving around the world. Even if you don't celebrate it, you can still be thankful. We have a lot to get into tonight. We had to start a little late because I was flying back home from home today. And we have 3 big stories, and there's new stuff in all 3 of the stories. And 2 of those stories, the story around Candace's assassination attempt, hit, whatever you want to call it, and the mysterious planes that are surrounding Charlie Kirk's killing. There's new breaking stuff from literally just the last 4 hours from some of our favorite creators that have interviewed new people and discovered new things, and we're going to cover some of that stuff from Baron Coleman, stuff from Nate Valhalla VFT, and we're going to try to keep the threads as in order as possible. But because a lot of this just happened in the last couple hours, we're going to bring a bunch of it all together right here, right now, because the picture is starting to come together, and it's pretty suspicious in all directions. There's PSYOPs like crazy. The DC shooter has everyone screaming PSYOP right from the start. And none of the other ones are going away. So we're just going to jump right into it. Welcome to Free Speech Friday. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll do supers at the end. I'll go down from the top in terms of the highest paid ones so that people that paid a lot for a super chat don't get skipped. And then when we get down into the lower ones, I'll just kind of skip through and try to get a bunch of random ones from the lower ones. Hopefully we can wrap this show up in 2 hours tonight, so we'll see how much time we have for that. Shout out to Twitch on the screen. Twitch isn't going to be on the screen the whole time tonight because we have some things that we just kind of have to show in the full half screen, because we're going to be looking at some suspicious flights through the middle of the night the day before Charlie was shot. And then all throughout the day that Charlie was shot. There's a new plane that no one has found before that distinctly changes its flight pattern for that one specific day. But before we get to that, while people are getting in here, while we're getting warmed up, let's start with something a little funnier and a little more lighthearted. Because the propaganda is out of control. And the things that people are posting on X is a total shit show these days. X is a cesspool. And I am now apparently being accused by a DOJ official, of being responsible for killing Charlie Kirk. Shout out to Diligent Denizen, always with his feelers out all throughout X. And he caught this, that Leo Terrell apparently reposted Yossi, that reposted Max, that was doing his standard Max Nordau thing. I condemn Ian Carroll for killing Charlie Kirk. But it's like, bro, this is kind of a weird thing for a government official to repost. And we're only going to spend like literally 30 seconds laughing at Leo Terrell, because when you read his bio, he's the chair of the DOJ task force to combat anti-Semitism, and he's senior counsel at the Justice Department. So yeah, that's the state of our combating of anti-Semitism today, is they're just doing our job for us. So to all of the Israel shills on X and in our literal government, please do not stop. You're making this so easy. It's wonderful. We love you for it. Thank you. We appreciate it. When you sign up for a propaganda war against the world's foremost intelligence apparatus, you kind of expect it to be a little more complicated than just letting them talk and look like total idiots. So, with that said, I think we're ready to get started. We've given people enough time to roll in, and we got a lot to get into. So let's just get into it with the DC shooter, with Mr. Ramanula, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. By now, I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you've seen. We were doing some live reporting on it when it happened. Just trying to get a sense for, is this real? What is it? Who is the guy? What's the identity? And pretty quickly, a wide array of journalists, from like mainstream journalists to sort of semi-alt journalists like Lara Logan to full-on alternative media, everyone started to come out with this information that this guy was part of the Kandahar strike force. I'm not your expert on that, but we're going to cite our boy Nate, who is the expert on that. He's ex-Green Beret. He literally fought alongside these guys. This guy's like I'm getting that he's like an Afghani Green Beret sort of. They trained these guys to the highest level. And immediately this does not make sense. Immediately this guy is very linked to the CIA, and he sacrificed, he put his whole family on the line for years in Afghanistan to fight alongside America. And a lot of these guys' families were then murdered by the Taliban once we abandoned them. So it's a little weird that he would just hang out in Washington State, in my hometown, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. And then just randomly decide to drive across the country and basically commit by cop, if you know what I'm saying. This dude was highly trained. He knew how to hurt people. And then he just like basically walks into a kill box because he's in the middle of DC surrounded by National Guardsmen. But the narrative is very well fed by this. The narrative is very happy about this. And the next steps in the narrative are pretty freaking obvious. But what actually happened, maybe not as obvious. I'm a little confused. And Nate at Valhalla VFT just did a huge section in his live stream that went very deep into the training these guys get, the history these guys have, who they are, and sort of the context there. So you can go watch him for that. We'll pull some clips from his stream a little later. But first thing I noticed, first thing you couldn't help but notice was this dude's kind of fat, mostly naked body being loaded into a ambulance. The photos in the clip went all over X, and it was like, okay, calm down. Let's blur. But it actually is kind of an important photo because of the way that the story has been reported. And we're going to briefly just show you the photo. He is wearing clothes, sort of. But it's important, and you'll see why in a second here. But look for blood in this photo, okay? Look for blood in this man being loaded into the ambulance. I don't see any, right? I do not see any. And we actually investigated on Google Earth. We went to the location of the shooting on Google Earth and like looked at the markings on the concrete. As best we can tell, it is a photo from that exact location. I asked Grok to analyze that photo's trajectory on X to check the metadata to make sure that it was a legitimate photo, that it was actually from that day, actually of the suspect. And as far as I can tell, as far as everything that I've seen, that's an actual photo of the actual suspect being loaded into the ambulance. Because at first I was like, this is probably a fake. This is probably just someone shit posting for engagement with fake photos or old photos or something like that. And maybe that is what it is. Doesn't seem like that's what it is, because when you read all the reporting about this, we'll come back to where it says Carol in the reporting a bunch. Because depending on whose reporting you read, some of the sources say that the suspect allegedly got shot by a third member of the National Guard and then was subdued, but officials did not say how many shots were fired at or by the suspect. I didn't see a gunshot wound. Lackenwall allegedly shot the two at roughly 2:15 after the suspect was shot. So apparently he was shot. Multiple sources reporting that he was shot. Maybe he was shot in the back. Maybe he was shot like in the leg. I don't know. And then in some of them, some of the reporting actually says that he was stabbed. DC shooting update. This is from the Hindustan Times, and I've seen this reported in American news outlets too. DC shooting update. Unarmed National Guardsman stabbed. Afghan national suspect with pocket knife. Report. Another unarmed guardsman stabbed the suspect. The reporting that I saw yesterday said that this other guardsman had stabbed him in the head multiple times to try to subdue him, and then they'd shot him twice. So you're getting different reporting from everybody. Right? Like, was he wearing body armor? I see in the chat. That's a good question, right? Because I don't see, just briefly, we're going to show it again. I don't see any evidence of any of that in this photo. And that's not to say that this event didn't happen. That's certainly not to say that these National Guards members were not killed. That's a tragedy, especially the day before Thanksgiving. And you can't help but wonder if it is a tragedy on purpose and what the hell is going on. So as far as the actual events, we have some serious questions about, did this guy actually do it? Is he getting framed? Was he set up? Was he actually shot and stabbed? How many shots were fired? We would like some details. But beyond that, whatever it is that actually happened that day, who ordered it is a big question. Because these guys are not random terrorists. These guys are probably as or more patriotic than most Americans. And I know that that sounds like, wow. These guys put their lives on the line hard. And if you go look at any Special Forces channel right now, any Green Beret, anyone that served with these guys, all of them are making very heartfelt, very long posts or videos about that exact nuance, that these are not just random Afghani terrorists. These are not jihadi terrorists. They're super highly vetted over many, many years as they move up the ranks to get to GSF, is my understanding based on these other guys' testimonies. And so there's something weird going on. And Nate just pointed out near the end of his stream here that Bibi Netanyahu was just speaking in the Knesset about how the only way that they're going to get support back in America is via Islamophobia, is by stoking the fear of Islamic terrorism. And the name of the game there is false flag attacks, right? So real quick, I just want to pull up our boy Nate for a little segment here, depending on if he's still alive or not.
I'm going to talk about Joe Kent, actually.
Nate is still alive.
I forgot to talk.
Killing it. Uh-oh, my super chat is probably going to pull in some of his super chats.
You have Chinese killing Muslims. Everywhere, get rid of all the Muslims. Must Iraq. That we were in it for the long haul. And that if you fighting ISIS, fighting alongside us, is they all became public enemy number one to the Taliban, to Al-Qaeda, although we did get rid of Al-Qaeda. So they counted on us as America because we promised them.
He's talking about these Afghani special forces that fought alongside Americans against the Taliban.
We promised Afghanistan, just like we promised Iraq, that we were in it for the long haul. And that if you supported us, if you stood up, if you rose up and helped us fight the Taliban, we would be there for you. We would defend you. We would protect you. And do you know what we did in 2021? We said, thanks for the help. Go fuck yourself. We're out. That's what really happened in Afghanistan. Okay? And so when we decided to leave, and I'll pull you up even people like Lindsey Graham, who was standing.
Cool. And Nate goes into a great breakdown of what the fallout of that is, of how the narrative is shifting, of what's really going on there. And I highly recommend you subscribe to Nate, and I recommend you go watch that stream because he gives a lot of details on that. And he does an interview with a man who was in the French Foreign Legion, this military unit that allegedly was put on the hit of Candace Owens. And that part is super spicy and super fascinating. And we're going to get to that in just a second. And hopefully I can find my clips while he's live because it's hard to navigate a live because the timestamps don't work. But before we get to that, I want to just remind us of the context here. Remind us of, the big picture in a really quick speed run. Because a lot of people that are hearing about this Candace story think it's completely ridiculous and completely impossible, okay? But most of people don't have a lot of context. And I've been doing a lot of running through the greater historical context around France, around Macron, around Epstein's relationship to France, the deep state's relationship to France, Israel's relationship to France, France's imperial relationship to the rest of the world. And now tonight on Nate's show, he gave us a great bunch of insights from the inside, from a guy that literally just finished serving with this unit, this battalion, this legion, I guess you would call it. He like just finished a year or two ago, is I believe what the story is. And oh boy, like Nate was mind blown by it. And Nate was a Green Beret. Nate was one of the ones that hit me up right after Candace made the announcement and was like, yo, does Candace realize what she's actually saying here? Because this is crazy, because this is the exact kind of unit that you would put on someone in this kind of a situation. And we'll get into that at the end of this little trail here. But first, to establish a little bit of context around who Macron is and why we're here, right? And we've gone through this before, so we're going to go pretty quick through this. Okay? President Macron was an incompetent regulator that became an incompetent banker that was selected by the Rothschilds. This was actually after he married his teacher that was totally a woman, who was at very best almost 40 when he was 14 or 15. She had a husband and 3 kids that she abandoned for this teenager, this young boy. That's the best version of the story that there is. That's the official narrative. And it does not hold any water. And Candace has spent the whole year breaking that down. We're going to come back to that in just a second. But along the way in his career, he was specifically selected by David de Rothschild to move up the ranks at the Rothschild Bank in France, despite knowing nothing, despite being completely incompetent, not even knowing what EBITDA is. And David de Rothschild personally referred to him as his protege multiple times. They groomed this man for the presidency. This man is deeply tied in to banking interests, deep state interests, Israeli interests, all these other things, okay? He's a very, very corrupt person. And you can find all sorts of mainstream articles about it, alternative media articles about it, French articles about it, American, global news articles about it. This is not some conspiracy theory. It's not like the Rothschilds are just some ancient history conspiracy. They are very present in France and in Switzerland and in London. And we did a whole episode about their family, and it was a banger. I highly recommend you watch it. And so the Brigitte Macron story had started to break in France, and journalists were winding up dead mysteriously in France that were close to this story. And Candace picked the story up and brought it over to America and turned it into a global sensation. And let's just say that we have questions. The whole world has questions, and it's very awkward. And it is a window not just into her own junk, but it's a window into a whole perverted system, into a grooming system, a cult, the deep state, like occult networks that might be behind a lot more than just the French presidency. And so there's a lot more interest than just President Macron and Brigitte Macron's honor on the line here. There's a whole network of Lord knows what darkness behind this. And in order to pull something like this off, in order to keep this going, you dang well need a network. You dang well need a cult. Okay? This is systemic. This is not just one woman with a dick. Okay? And it's not just one woman with a dick that married possibly her relative, like her cousin or brother or Lord knows. Candace can tell you more about those specific details. This is a feature, not a bug, let's just say. And now that this assassination story has broken, a lot of people also don't have context on French special forces and French intelligence. And to be honest, I didn't have a lot of context on it before this either. I have not been super focused on them, except for looking at their, shall we say, empire in Africa and what they've tried to do to hold on to it, reporting on things like the Epstein emails, extensive evidence of Jeffrey Epstein and Ehud Barak working on behalf of Israel to go and help France secure the continued colonization of their resource-rich Western African colonies. Things like gold and diamonds and other precious metals, places like Ivory Coast and Mali and all these Western African war-torn states. But when you actually go looking, there is a fair bit of reporting on President Macron's corruption, but also President Macron's literal use of a secret army of professional assassins to eliminate critics and the opposition. There's a surprising number of suspicious deaths that have followed in the wake of this man's presidency. And once you watch the Brigitte story and you realize that there is no explanation for her inability to prove that she was ever pregnant with her children, her inability to prove that she was ever a young girl, her inability to prove that her brother is still out there somewhere, just secretly living. Like, her complete inability to encounter this story in the most basic of way and completely discredit Candace instantly if she just would produce any evidence at all. Once you realize all of that and you look at the strange deaths trailing along behind Macron, once you learn about the French Foreign Legion, you start to think a little harder. And then when you watch Nate have a live stream a couple hours ago with a dude that served in the French Foreign Legion, explaining how guys get recruited, how they give them fake identities, how they come from all over the world. We'll get into that a little later. It's actually not unbelievable at all. It makes perfect sense. It's very believable. That's not me saying that it's for sure true. But I know Candace, and I know her level of vetting, and I know that when she says she has received credible evidence from someone in the French government, that means that she already considered that maybe it was a trick or a trap or something else like that, and she already vetted it to the extent where she felt like it was dang straight enough to post. And since then, it has borne more fruit too, apparently. But I just wanted to briefly give us a little context on this Assassination Squad article from Uncensored Foreign Policy, written by Lucas Leroz in March of 2025. Because it actually leads to a very interesting data point from very recently. The beginning of the article is rather general and vague, and then it kind of gets into the specifics of each assassination further down. And it's a very long article, actually. I didn't even pull in the whole article because it just keeps going and going and going, but we're going to get the idea pretty quick. The series of mysterious deaths of prominent French political opponents and critics of President Emmanuel Macron are not mere coincidences. The investigation, which included testimony from former intelligence agents, informants, and individuals with deep connections in French political circles, revealed the existence of a clandestine and highly organized group of professional assassins acting with Macron's tacit approval. Now, a lot of this article is based on anonymous sources for understandable reasons. But for that, you should take it all with a grain of salt. But the deaths, the things that are provable are very much proven. They're very much factual, mysterious deaths. And then the anonymous sources are filling in the gaps behind it. Sources in the French intelligence community, some of whom requested anonymity for fear of retaliation, confirmed the existence of a network functioning as a political assassination squad. Among those implicated in the investigation are individuals with long-standing contacts within Macron's inner circle. The foundation is shorthand for the group of journalists that did this report. Their sources claim that the group's activities extend beyond the elimination of political figures. It also includes journalists, activists, and anyone who might disrupt the smooth functioning of the Macron regime. The deaths, often attributed to accidents, suicide, or natural causes, bear the hallmarks of carefully planned attacks and acts of retaliation intended to send a message to anyone who might oppose Macron's government. And again, to be clear, I'm not under the assumption that literally everything reported in this article is true. It's very possible that one or two of these deaths are or are not, but there's a pattern here, and we're looking for patterns. And then later, when we talk about the planes and Charlie Kirk, we're going to be looking for what breaks the patterns. You know what I'm saying? So, one of the earliest and most alarming cases was the 1979 murder of Robert Boulin, a prominent opposition figure. Boulin, a vocal critic of government policies, was found dead under circumstances that many believe were not accidental. This is not about Macron yet. This is just about, there is corruption in France. There are political murders in France. There are people that mysteriously vanish, just like in the United States, just like whistleblowers on OpenAI and Boeing and everything else. France is very much not innocent of this. One of the most high-profile cases was the 1997 death of Jean-Edern Hallier, a writer and journalist who was investigating the illegitimate daughter of François Mitterrand, the 21st president of France. Because, European royalty has a long history of this. One such case was the 2014 death of investigative journalist Hosanna Carmen, who was looking into arms trafficking and shady deals between French corporations and Middle Eastern terrorist groups. Carmen's body was found in the trunk of her car in a remote area of Marseille. Her death was officially ruled a suicide. She climbed into her own trunk and committed suicide. You know what I'm saying? Since Macron took office, the political climate in France has become even more hostile and dangerous for critics. In 2019, Benoit Guérin, a protest organizer in New Caledonia who had gained significant support for his opposition to Macron's policies in the Pacific, was killed in what was officially labeled a tragic accident. Many viewed it as a targeted attack. Local authorities have been tracking his movements for days before the incident. Olivier Dassault, a billionaire and outspoken critic of President Macron's policies, died in a helicopter crash in 2021. Although authorities quickly labeled it an accident, the timing of the crash raised significant suspicions. And, they go into it more. We're not going to get into the details of all these things. And again, maybe that was an accident. Maybe. And then, this one's very relevant. On March 6, 2022, at around 12:30 p.m., Isabella Ferreira's body was found on the rocks at the base of the Rance Causeway in St. Malo. Ferreira, I'm trying to say it like Spanish, but she's French. I don't know how you say that in French. A 56-year-old woman had been preparing to release compromising information about Brigitte Macron. She was one of the journalists that was on this story in a big way, sort of paving the way for what eventually became Xavier Boussard's reporting, is my understanding, and then Candace Owens's. Friends and colleagues of Ferreira claimed that she had been working on materials for 7 years that could undermine Macron's political career. 7 years of digging into Brigitte's nethers. And official reports indicated that her death was a suicide. But there has been no investigation into the circumstances since. And you can go and watch Candace's episode about it to get a whole bunch more details. But yeah, you just seem to have accidents when you research Brigitte Macron. There is precedent for this in France. In 2022, many critics of Macron's government suspected the death of Yvan Colonna, a separatist leader, to be politically motivated. He died in prison under super questionable circumstances. The guy that actually took him out had just been moved to the prison like 2 months before, I think it was. So for this investigation, they were able to contact a current member of the French National Assembly who claims to have directly witnessed the creation of Macron's assassination squad. According to the foundation's source, the unit was named Lily in honor of the fleur de lis, the symbol of France's monarchy at its peak. It consists of 40 to 50 people from France's elite intelligence services, veterans of the DGSE and DGSI. The squad's mission is extreme but clear: to eliminate any person or group that could destabilize Macron's rule. And to be fair, that's probably kind of journalistic embellishment to make it sound extra spooky, but that is kind of what's being alleged here, right? And then this part gets really interesting. This is the thread that we're going to kind of jump out on and then jump back in on. The leader of the Lily, according to the foundation source, is Alexandre Benaya, Macron's former chief of staff responsible for security. I was like, you're really going to just tell us this, like, the alleged leader's name? Let's Google him. Let's figure out if who is this guy? Is there any reporting about him? Well, he's got a Wikipedia page about the Benaya affair. And this is obviously a very deep rabbit hole that has all sorts of, French people I'm sure know all about this. I'd never heard of it before. So I'm certainly not an expert on this dude or these three affairs. They're not sexual affairs. They're violence, corruption, criminal scandals around his work for President Macron. But when you look into it, you'll learn some things about this man. And let's be clear, maybe he's not the literal leader of these assassination squads. Who knows? Maybe the source is either misled or full of shit. Who knows? But it leads you to a piece of information that is publicly available, that is widely reported on, that fills in part of the picture. Because this guy he served as security officer and deputy chief of staff to President of France, Emmanuel Macron. He was very close to Macron. There's reporting on a ski trip that I think it was in 2023. Maybe it's 2013. They were talking about a ski trip where Macron went with just him and his private security. He was deputy chief of staff. He rose up the ranks with Macron. There was a first affair that I didn't clip up because it was a little more mundane in my mind, at least at first. In the second affair, it was revealed by the French online journal Mediapart at the end of 2018 that Benaia was still in possession of a number of diplomatic passports several months after he was fired from the Élysée staff. These passports allowed him to meet several African leaders, including the Chad president, Idriss Déby. So, like, traveling around with fraudulent passports, meeting with members of foreign governments, doing, like, intelligence work? Right? In the third affair, also called the Russian contracts by the French press, it was revealed again by Mediapart that Benaia had contracted financial ties with two Russian oligarchs during his tenure in the Élysée, including Iskander Makhmudov, a businessman who is said to have ties with the Russian mafia. All right, that's all very relevant to the type of thing we're talking about. And if you don't know about the French Foreign Legion and what the Candace story is, we're about to get to that. Both the National Assembly and Senate launched parliamentary inquiries into the affairs. It was a whole big story, okay? They had people testify. They issued rulings. And then you can read more about his backstory, where he was born, how he entered into kind of security and then into like special operations sort of. It doesn't sound like he entered through a military direction, but it's kind of hard to say because I haven't had enough time to look into his full bio. But he began his career as a reservist gendarme in Eure under then platoon commander Sébastien Lecornu, who at the time was a member of the Union for a Popular Movement. His name appeared numerous times in the 2017 Macron email leaks, dubbed the Macron leaks, which I didn't know about. I'm going to have to plug those into web and see what they're all about. Having procured several non-lethal weapons and riot shields at the request of the Élysée to aid him in his capacity as a security officer. Benaia was granted a carry license by the Paris Police Prefecture in October 2017. So he's all wrapped up in securing President Macron and sometimes traveling around with fraudulent passports to, corrupt nations in Africa to do corrupt business. And it's being alleged that he is now the head of this assassination squad. Seems like a bit of a jump, right? Well, I also found this other article, Azer News, and I don't entirely know what to make of it yet because I literally just found it like an hour and a half ago. But read the headline. Interpol, think like international police, Interpol, issues red notice for former French official Alexandre Benaia at Azerbaijan's request. And Azer News, I assume, is like Azerbaijan News, like a Azerbaijan-based news agency. I'm not familiar with them. This is from November 29th of 2025. This is from today. Tomorrow, literally, this article is from the future because in Azerbaijan, it's already... Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, I was like, what's going on? This is the day that it is today when I viewed and took this screenshot. Okay, thank goodness. The article is from the 28th of April, 2025. I was like, damn, breaking news, homie. Yeah, so what's a red notice and why is Azerbaijan looking for this guy and what did he do, right? Like, I have all sorts of questions now. Because it is a bit of a jump from like, oh, he was like procuring riot shields for like protecting the French president and he was like doing some sketchy passport stuff to he's literally in charge of like an assassination squad to go kill like Americans. That's a big jump, right? So what's he up to these days? And why is Azerbaijan pissed at him? The Interpol General Secretariat has issued a red notice for French citizen Alexandre Benaia, the former head of the French Presidential Protection Service, following a unanimous decision in April of 2025. The decision came after a legal request submitted in 2024 by Azerbaijan's State Security Service in connection with an ongoing criminal investigation. He's accused of receiving large... Okay, so Benaia, along with Anas Deraz, vice president of the French company SAUR, is accused of receiving large-scale bribes and committing other criminal acts to facilitate the lifting of international sanctions on the assets of Russian billionaire of Azerbaijani origin, Farhad Ahmadov, in 2018. Daraz is currently under investigation and has been banned from leaving Azerbaijan. So his buddy is in Azerbaijan, trapped there. And Benaya is, I guess, out doing something, and they're issuing a red notice trying to hunt him down. It sounds a lot like Jason Bourne movies, honestly. It sounds like bro was up to some bad stuff on some maybe fake passports in some other countries on behalf of some Russian mobsters, just mingling out there in the intelligence world, right? And he kind of got a little caught in the cookie jar. Interesting. According to reports, officials allegedly demanded millions of dollars in bribes from Ahmadov, promising to secure the release of his luxury yacht Luna from international arrest and to shield him from sanctions. Part of the bribe was reportedly transferred to Anas Daraz's account, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on a lot more, but I just wanted to highlight this part. The issuance of a red notice, the most serious alert for international searches, reflects the existence of credible and substantial evidence gathered by Azerbaijani authorities. A red notice requests the arrest of the individual pending extradition to the requesting country. So he's up to some shit, at least. He's up to some shit, apparently. And apparently, they have the existence of credible and substantial evidence gathered by the Azerbaijani authorities. I don't know how good the Azerbaijani authorities are. Some of you might not even know where Azerbaijan is. Maybe open up a map. It's not super relevant, but we could open up a map. Okay. Azerbaijan is right over here in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Right down here. Okay. Underneath old Soviet Russia, above Iran, Turkey, Iraq. It's a pretty rough region. Okay. So Azerbaijan has definitely been through some shit. Who knows what's going on over there. Kind of relevant context. That being said, this is interesting, right? If this article is even 70% legitimate and well-sourced and correct, suddenly we've got some questions. Suddenly we've got allegations of a unit of assassins that are being used for this exact kind of shit. And then we have Candace, the foremost threat to President Macron and everything up and above and behind him. And Nate pointed out in his live that Candace got this tip, not even understanding the wording of the tip. She said the French Legion 13th Battalion, not realizing that she was actually missing the word Foreign Legion 13th Battalion. And Nate was talking to Taylor, this other guy that was in the French Foreign Legion, about how that's a very specific unit tip that kind of indicated to them that the tip came from someone in the French government that knew about that legion, that battalion of the Legion. And Candace didn't really understand when she received it. Now she does know. But at the time, she didn't really understand what that unit is all about. And that's what Nate just hosted this crazy live stream with an ex-French Foreign Legionnaire to explain to us all. And holy smokes, was it spicy. Nate, are you still alive? Nate's still alive?
Kind of a hard line.
Nate's still alive, dog. He's killing it. All right. Well,
I imagine it.
Dang it, because then it's going to be hard to find the timestamps. Highly recommend you go and watch this whole interview in its entirety. Okay? Taylor Kavanaugh, ex-French Foreign Legionnaire. He tells the story of he got kicked out of the Navy SEALs because he got in some fights, and then they got mad at him, and then he got popped for steroids, if you couldn't tell. So he got kicked out of the SEALs. And what the French Foreign Legion is, as he describes it, is the French Foreign Legion is composed of an international force of misfits, of ne'er-do-wells, of people that have run into problems or trouble in other places, people that got kicked out of their other special ops units. Basically anyone that can pass all the rigorous testing whether or not you're a criminal. And it kind of sounds to me like they purposely look for criminals, like they purposely look for people that have a record, that have something to run away from. Because then Taylor disclosed to us that they give them fake passports. And he disclosed to us that they give them fake Canadian passports. France has a long-standing relationship with Canada. They speak French in Canada. It's a cover. So he says in this interview that he had a functioning but falsified Canadian passport on behalf of the French government. I don't know if that's true or not, but he said it. Okay? And you can go and source that from him yourself. And the very first thing that I thought when I heard that was Goose Bay. Goose Bay, up in Canada, has been appearing on our flight logs an awful lot for these Egyptian military planes. These Egyptian military planes that Candace is alleging were flying pieces of the mission over to the United States. And suddenly it's like, it's going through my mind of like, well, if they're giving the French Foreign Legionnaires Canadian passports as their covers, false identities, so A, it won't track back to France if you were to catch one of them. It gives them this plausible deniability. But B, then is it like it's Canadian citizens flying into Canada and it's like a whole bypass of this whole customs thing coming over from Europe? I'm just speculating, obviously. I'm just kind of like extrapolating on what we are being presented with. But it just stuck out at me because a whole bunch of these flights go through Goose Bay. Taylor goes on to describe, they go through a whole bunch of scenarios. And I'm just going to kind of scattershot at some of these. Where are we at right now? If it starts at 240, all right, then we'll just scattershot in to about 220.
That takes about 7 or 8 years. Takes about.
And his audio is a little bad, but it's worth it. Trust me. I need to go back like a minute.
Fucking ID. I'll it's time to show you. It's a trip. Trent Clayson, born in New York City.
Okay, he's talking about his ID right now.
They're actually French, so they have a fake identity in their own country. Very.
Like, where is there? Is it primarily French guys, or is it literally just all foreigners?
It's 1% French. All the rest foreigners. And even going in, if you are French, they're required to, on their fake identity they give them, they make them Canadian.
They make them Canadian?
Yeah, it's because they speak French, and so they have to have the nationality.
Okay. So I think what he said is that if they are French, they make those guys Canadian. I don't think he's implying they make every French Foreign Legionnaire Canadian. I think he's saying that they make all the different French Foreign Legionnaires just fake identities from all over the place. But the French ones, they can't say they're from France, so they say they're Canadian. So that way, all the French Foreign Legionnaires, no matter who you are, if you get caught, you're traced back to that country or that country or that country. I think that's what he's saying.
Makes sense, right?
And that is exactly what you need for an assassination squad, for something that's like a deep black operation. And these things obviously do happen. We know these things happen. JFK got shot in the head, okay? Charlie Kirk got shot in the neck. Someone did it, and it wasn't Tyler Robinson.
Right, and so they all make Canadian. They're from fucking Quebec or whatever.
And they're actually French.
They're actually French. So they have a fake identity in their own country. Very odd.
So this is why this is so compelling, is because of stuff like this. I mean, like, we're talking about guys who are given a fake identity to be a part of this unit or reinventing an identity.
And Nate is blown away. Nate is a Green Beret. And Nate is like from one of the parts of the military that is trained to do the most clandestine stuff. The Green Berets are literally experts in overthrowing governments. That's what their job is. Their job is to fly overseas and to train militias and forces and rebels, and to give them all their tactics and everything, and basically train them up to overthrow this government, and then fly over there and train them up and help them overthrow that government. That's like what the Green Berets do. They do lots of other great stuff too. But they do some pretty clandestine stuff. But as a member of the American military, Nate has dealt with all, like, there's lots of rules and there's lots of regulations, and usually special forces guys are kind of like, I don't want to say shit on people like me, like conspiracy theorists, but they are usually pretty resistant to conspiracy theorists because they've lived through it and seen that, like, you think it's all conspiratorial, but like even the guys in books like this, they deal with all this red tape, all this American military bullshit. You're not just like allowed to like go murder people randomly. Okay. And so he's from one of the most deep in the weeds of like the dark ops of American military. And he's known some dudes that have done some crazy shit. But then Taylor is explaining this, and Nate's just blown away. He's like, can't even believe what he's hearing. He didn't expect to hear this kind of shit on this interview.
I've heard is kind of normal too, right? Did you?
Yeah,
I've heard. I think I was watching your content, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you got like new IDs when you were there potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. They sent me Clayson was my name. They use your same initials and then roll your birth
with a different name.
Totally different. And so I have a fucking ID. And I'll it's time to show you. It's a trip. Trent Clayson, born in New York City, and they move your birthday.
What?
Yeah, and so you can keep that identity. And
so let's clarify. He just said that the French Foreign Legion issued him a fake American ID, born in New York City. I think he said Trent Clayson. So what country can't they issue IDs from? And actually, he answers that question later. It's just North Korea and Cuba, I think, as he says, are the only two countries that they don't issue IDs from. So somehow the French Foreign Legion is just counterfeiting, forging, or has like, I can't imagine that they have like treaties with every other nation, like 150 different nations, to just produce fake IDs for their fucking assassins and special forces and shit. So they have access to some forgers that can forge documents from any nation? That's a powerful force. They can basically make a chameleon out of anyone. A fresh start program, correct, Travis? And so they're picking off criminals. And Taylor seems like he's not like a criminal. He got popped for steroids. He just seems like a rowdy motherfucker that likes to hurt things and was doing it for the American government and then got kicked out and was like, well, my life's going downhill pretty fast because I want to do hard shit. And so he went over there to do it. Judge him however you want. I'm not a very judgmental person. But from what he's describing, there's some hard motherfuckers in there. He describes KGB people. He describes people from every nation around the world, from all different dark operations units, you name it. People that have been in crazy prisons. And they're giving them fake IDs from other nations and sending them out to do secret operations around the world.
And naturalizing France as that identity. That takes about
Afterwards?
7 or 8 years. Takes about
Wow.
7 or 8 years minimum. But most guys do what's called RSM, which is called a regularization situation militaire. You regularize your military situation. So
I think
you
I'm
can
about to hit
actually
this
get your
time code.
passport back more often than you think. When Ukraine kicked off, we lost Legion lost about 5%.
So what he's describing right now is that when the Ukraine war kicked off, he was in the French Foreign Legion, and he witnessed about 5% of their fighting force just disappear into the shadows to go and join the Ukrainian military, probably under false identities, and conduct special operations on behalf of Ukraine. And to regular citizens like you or me, that might sound like, oh yeah, this is military stuff. Militaries share people. Nate is like, what the fuck?
Of guys.
Really? To the Ukraine Special Forces, probably?
Fight almost immediately. Some Ukrainian, but I know even some Americans, prior Marines that left to go fight and are there.
From the French Foreign Legion?
From my barracks room. Kid,
Wow.
somebody I roomed
While you were in.
Oh yeah, it kicked off when we were there, and it was, you know, they pulled us aside and they talked to us, and they knew that there were some things they foreign even sent some of the Ukrainian guys there in buses. They said you can go 2 weeks, if whoever wants to fight, or get your family and come back. France allowed their families to come back if you're a Legionnaire.
Wow.
But some guys say I know some guys that have been fighting there for a while, man, at their highest level.
I'm gonna try to hit the next time code.
Acting alone piece, right? Because it's a pretty deep operation. I mean,
okay, I overshot it.
Tree that's now, but
Nate posed a really interesting question.
Not possible.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
and at that point, it's like you have somebody that's no longer maybe.
Oh wait, I got to go back a little further.
I mean, maybe the Olympics, something like.
Nate asked this question of, so then wouldn't they have like French Foreign Legion guys kind of scattered all around the world? Like, couldn't they just activate like an French Foreign Legionnaire that's now living in America under one of these new identities that they've given him after his service? Pay him $1.5 million, and then boom, you've got someone already in the country? Like, isn't that theoretically possible? And of course, they're not saying that this proves that Candace is correct about everything. They're not saying that. They're just examining what the French Foreign Legion is. And so it's entirely within the realm of possibility that this would be the exact kind of legion that you would want to do something like this.
Like that is about pretty much the only place you're going to run into that. And everyone kind of speaking that catch-all dog shit French that we all speak.
So it's this part.
Because we all suck at French, bro. It's brutal language. It's hard.
So I mean, there's possibility with that massive web of connection that it might not even have to be somebody that Macron pulls out of a unit. He can say, hey, I need you to find me a high-level prior FFL guy in America, and some texts get made.
Dude, I got the chills when you said that, man, because it's but it's not possible.
So he cut out a lot right there. I think what he just said is it's not likely, but it's not impossible. But it sounded like he said it's not possible, but the first thing he said was it's not likely. And he said he got chills there for a second. So the context implies that he said it's not likely, but it's not impossible, I think. Tell me if you guys think something different, okay? And then there's one more clip that we're going to listen to here. He talks later about African operations, about how the French Foreign Legion is all over Africa, and it's basically just them securing mining operations, which is exactly the reporting that we were doing about Epstein and the Israeli investments in securing mining operations and resources in Western Africa, specifically in Ivory Coast. But he talks about other countries like Mali. I don't know if he mentions Sierra Leone, or like he might have mentioned Sierra Leone. He might have mentioned Burkina Faso. He definitely mentioned Mali. I forget the others.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
And at that point, it's like you have somebody that's no longer, maybe you got a brand new identity they left France with from a different foreign country that's now potentially in America, that's who knows doing what, that through this web of interconnectivity you can get a hold of and be like, hey, we got a $1.5 million contract to do this.
Yeah.
It's not. My point is, it's not unrealistic.
No, it's not. And the whole not acting alone piece, right? Because it's a pretty deep operation. I mean, I'm getting asked that. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, and a lot of layers of security and covered tracks in some way. It's interesting how that leak, if it is something that's true, it's just weird to me how specific she was. That's what's strange to me. It's like when it's not something that a woman like that would have just stumbled across.
Candace would have no, and I know, and I'm not trying to talk trash about Candace, but I know her access to information. She would have no idea what any of these units are. She would not have been able to just organically make this up to be like, yeah, it's the French Foreign Legion 13.
Right? See what they're saying? Taylor, who served in this legion, with these guys, with these various units. There's a complex unit structure in all military forces. Candace couldn't have just made up some unit that actually exists. And beyond that, whoever leaked it to her couldn't have just made up some unit that actually exists. They would have had to know that it exists. They would have had to be highly placed to even have the information at all, to even be able to get the information right.
13th Brigade. Like Candace is not connected to any of this like we are in the special operations.
You wouldn't even know what to Google.
Well, and I know that because I'm going to pull this up because I'm going to pull up her post, and I noticed this because I'm like, people are missing this right away because she said.
So this is the last piece we're going to cover from this, and then we're going to kind of wrap it all up and go to the Egyptian plains and look at what we're seeing at the other end of this operation in the air with hard data.
As we move down here, where is it? Okay, she says, further to this point, the person claims that the Charlie Kirk assassin trained with the French Legion 13th Brigade. So immediately, I knew what she meant.
So the person claimed, so again, there's two different assassination concepts here. One towards Candace, and then there's Charlie Kirk. And we know that the Charlie Kirk one happened. Well, some people think it was faked. And, I'm not shitting on you guys. Please keep on pursuing your theories as well. I listen to all theories. But there's two different assassinations. But this leaker apparently is alleging that the Charlie Kirk assassin trained with the French Foreign Legion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. And that a similar unit, a piece of the same or similar operation is being used to target her. That's kind of what's being alleged. Okay. So that's why we're going to go over to the Charlie Kirk assassination and look at the planes and just ask some questions about what it is that we're seeing.
Which was the French Foreign Legion. But Candace didn't even know. You could tell Candace didn't even know this was the French Foreign Legion, but someone from the French government told her this unit, and so she said the French Legion. So it tells me someone from the French government did.
I just saw a super come in. It's like, is he allowed to share this info? That doesn't seem right. It's like, I have the same fucking question. It's like, I don't know what Taylor's thinking. I don't know if he's allowed. I can't imagine he's allowed to talk about this. But at the same time, like, what are they going to do? Come after him? I don't know.
Give her this information for sure.
100%. And whoever gave her that information also, that's very specific.
Very specific.
Even in the French government and the military, people are aware what the Foreign Legion is, but that's very specific to get down to the regimental level. Like, not many people could name off regiments of the Foreign Legion.
It would be like for us as Green Berets, somebody would be like, there's somebody in 3rd Battalion from 1st Group that's doing this. Like the average person would be like, nobody would know what that means. And if you weren't actually receiving that directly from that information.
And just to clarify for anyone that's not familiar, I was not familiar with Taylor Kavanaugh before this interview, but Nate was familiar with him. He is known to him. Taylor is known to Nate by people that they both served with. The military, especially the special forces groups, in my understanding, is a very sort of tight-knit, people that know people kind of a community. And so this isn't just some random person that just appeared. Taylor has an internet presence. He has a channel that you can subscribe to. He does a lot of motivational and fitness stuff. He is a public figure. And Nate knows people that served with him directly before he left the American Special Forces. And so there's a lot of back context on the vetting that Taylor is legit, as far as legit can be with this kind of story. So just to give you some context there. And so Taylor just gave us, allegedly, a shitload of context on the French Foreign Legion and on how this leak could even occur and how this is exactly the kind of unit that you would look for to do something like this. Right? So that's... Sorry, guys. That's wild. So we're going to put that away. Shout out to Nate for an awesome live stream tonight. I think he's still going. And in just a moment, we're going to check in with Baron, who also live streamed today and shared a whole new breaking angle. Let me just show you that for just a second. Baron found a new flight that we didn't know about before. And if you aren't already subscribed to Baron Coleman, definitely... Oh, can I not zoom in? Definitely subscribe to is it not going to tell me your handle here? At Real Baron Pod? At Real Baron Podcast on YouTube. And furthermore,
on Israel?
Yeah. Also go subscribe to Nate's channel at Valhalla VFT on YouTube. Total legends. Both of them are doing incredible reporting on everything related to Charlie Kirk's assassination, and now to all the spider webbing fractals of that. But they also do lots of great reporting on other things too. So shout out to them. So in a second, we're going to come back to Baron's live stream and watch just a couple of short clips from it. But first, I want to get some context, okay? I want to get some context on these Egyptian flights. And don't worry, we're not going to go into this granularity tonight. I've been doing Twitch streams all week, digging into the reporting piece by piece, and like it's been very in the weeds. It's been very nerdy. A lot of us are confused. But through digging into the granularity, into the actual data at this level, the actual flights, the actual KML files, the tracks themselves, the timing and everything, I've been getting a lot of context. And I figured we needed to distill that context down into a much simpler form. So I did that. And chat, I love you guys, especially the regulars that I see down there. But for a second, we're going to go full on this side so you guys can see this. Huge shout out to almost 17,000 people watching right now. If you are watching right now, you're a legend. If you're having fun, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. I don't know how many likes we have right now because I haven't refreshed my page, but I bet a bunch of you haven't closed the chat and hit the like and then just reopen the chat. Thank you. It helps me out. I don't, shill at you a lot. I don't do any of that too much because honestly, I don't care that much. But I appreciate it when you do. I really do appreciate it. And Nate hasn't even Nate was going to raid us with his homies after his show was over, and he hasn't even come over here yet. So the Egyptian flight calendar in distilled form. I wanted to see which Egyptian military planes are here at what times, what overlaps with what events. And then I want to be putting other events like Charlie's death, like Charlie's tweets, like Candace's storytelling, like President Trump calling Candace, asking her to stop talking about President Macron. I want to put those directly onto the calendar. So I did. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But we need a little context in the big picture here, which is why we have all of this flight data like this. Because these planes have a signature. You need to look at the pattern of how the plane is normally operating in order to get some sort of context on what types of planes they are. And we know that they're owned by the Egyptian government because they tell us that they're owned by the Egyptian government. Okay? But what kind of stuff do they do for the Egyptian government? And when you look at all of their flight paths, the highlights are when they're in America, and everything else is when they're in Cairo. And you'll notice that SUBGM, this data is showing where it departed from and where it said it was going to and how long it flew for. And then this is the transponder data and their declared departure and arrival times. And you'll notice there's a bunch of dashes because all these flights with dashes are flights where they just turned off their transponder halfway through the flight, or they turned it on already midair flying over the desert as they came back to Cairo. So all of this flight data, not literally all, but like huge blocks of the flight data for all these planes when they're back in Egypt are secret flights. Okay? That's assuming that the transponder data is accurate at all and that it's not being spoofed in some crazy fucking tech way. But just what's shown to us is already a clear signature of like secret government or military or intelligence operations. And that's okay. Egypt is allowed to have secret spy planes. America has secret spy planes. I've been tracking an Italian secret spy plane to get some context on this. Israel has secret spy planes. China does. Everyone has secret spy planes, okay? That's fine. But when Egyptian secret spy planes suddenly are in Provo, Utah, we should probably ask why, right? We would like to know why. And it turns out, actually, that there might be a legitimate explanation for it. There might be, okay? It's important to try to falsify your own theories, okay? This text is generated by Claude. It's AI generated text, but I've sourced it. I've dug through it a fair bit. And we're not trying to get super specific on granular details. We're just getting the big picture here. Duncan Aviation services these planes that the Egyptian military is using. And they have a contract with the Egyptian military, apparently, long-running contract, to service their government planes. And their headquarters is in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is a typical American. Hey, what's up? What's up, Valhalla in the chat? I see a Wang Haffen raid in the chat. Shout out to Valhalla VFT for dropping the big $100 dono on the way in. Welcome to the party, homies. We already just covered a bunch of clips from Nate's stream with Taylor, which was crazy. And now we're getting into the context of these Egyptian military planes. And we're just establishing the context that, A, the planes, when they're in Egypt, are flying a bunch of secret missions. They're flying missions where their transponders are turning off halfway through the flight, or they're coming back and turning their transponders on as they're approaching Cairo. And so clearly they're being used for secret operations of some sort, which is not illegal. That's not a problem. It's just we want to know why they're hanging out in the U.S. And maybe they're hanging out in the U.S. to get serviced at Lincoln Duncan Aviation headquarters. Could be. It turns out that Duncan Aviation does have a Provo location. Okay? It's not as big as the Lincoln location. It's not their main service station. But they do operate a satellite maintenance facility in Provo. And they specialize apparently in tip-to-tail MRO for Gulfstream aircrafts. But they can also service the Falcons. So maybe all the flights to Provo, even the coincidental ones that are right when Charlie's there, maybe they're just getting serviced. Okay? But the last piece of context we need here is the range of a Dassault Falcon 7X, which is what a bunch of these planes are, particularly some of the really suspect ones that were there the time of Charlie's assassination that flew out that day and a few days later. They have an enormous range. They're called Falcons because they were designed to fly super freaking fast, super freaking far, okay? Maximum range and, give or take, about 6,000 nautical miles. Cairo direct to Provo is just over that range, barely. So if you're servicing your planes, you probably need one stop. The gal that's doing the great videos about the flights that's way more expert on it, I'm forgetting her name. You've seen her with the glasses and the hair. She's talking about maybe they're stopping at Minot nuclear base, or rather it's like in Minot airstrips right next to this nuclear armed facility, like the premier nuclear base in America. Maybe it's because they're getting like anti-nuclear tech. Maybe they're getting like nuclear proof radars. I don't know. Way outside of my purview. So maybe they make 2 stops on their way into wherever they're getting serviced. But let's look at what they actually do on our simplified calendar that we made. So we don't have to look at all this crazy data. We can just go to the calendar and see what are they actually doing. Take note of the pink one. So you'll see the different colored bars. That's an Egyptian military craft that is in the United States at some point. And then I have listed what flights they're doing in and around and to America and back out of America. And there's this pink one that has been, it's SUBGM, and it's been in Provo since July of 2024. Probably getting maintenance done, right? That would be the normal explanation for that, I would assume, okay? Can't imagine why else an Egyptian military plane is hanging out in Provo for almost a year. But then, let's look at the first flight in, SUBTU. On January 16th, they fly Cairo to Paris, stay overnight, and then they go in one day, Paris to Omaha, Nebraska, to Lincoln, Nebraska. Omaha and Lincoln are right next to each other. So we already have 1 flight, 2 flights, 3 flights to get to Lincoln. Then they hang out in Lincoln for a week, and then they fly Lincoln to Wilmington, Delaware, and then Wilmington, Delaware, all the way to Cairo. It's a lot of flights for a maintenance trip, but maybe it's maintenance. Let's look for patterns, right? Remember patterns, okay? Yellow comes in, Cairo to Paris, and then the next day, always overnighting in Paris, you'll notice, Paris to Detroit to Lincoln. Okay? Then a week later, Lincoln to Wilmington, and then Wilmington to Cairo the next day. They like to stay in Wilmington, Delaware for one night, where this weird hangar that Candace uncovered, owned by Satis, this French-funded company, just happens to have this hangar where they paint planes. Then, new flight, green. Cairo to Paris, stays overnight, and then Paris to St. Louis. And then it does a little St. Louis to St. Louis for 15 minutes. Sorry, St. Louis. I called you St. Louis. Note that Candace starts airing the Becoming Brigitte season 1 at the start of February, January 31st. And then we start getting more of these planes coming into America. And I don't know if maybe it's just a coincidence. Could just be a coincidence. February 17th, her interview with Xavier Poussard airs while this other green plane is in St. Louis, for whatever that's worth. And then right after this green plane leaves, this green plane from Cairo to Paris and then to America, it leaves the weekend of the 22nd, 23rd. And then on the 24th, Charlie KIRK messages Candace and says, hey, I have something to tell you from the White House. They asked me to call you. I'm just the messenger here, but it's important. Okay, I'm around. Call me. They call. Charlie's like, hey, someone really high up in the White House wants you to stop talking about Macron. Candace is like, nope. The next day, Sergio Gore calls her and basically says, the president wants you to stop. Just frickin' stop already. And she's like, no, he can call me himself. The next day, Donald Trump calls Candace. And he explains how he had met with Macron and Macron had taken him aside and asked him if he could ask Candace to shut the fuck up kindly. And Candace, in her episodes where she talks about this, she deduces from what Charlie had been texting her, because Charlie had texted her when it was like an anonymous person from the White House. And he'd said that basically Macron was holding up the negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war, with the context being that I need Candace to stop talking about my fucking wife's penis. And if she'll do that, then I'll end the Ukraine war. And so on the 26th, just a few days after this plane left, total coincidence, President Trump calls Candace, and he doesn't explicitly say that Macron is holding up the war, but the context is all there. And Candace says she'll keep it quiet for a while, but eventually she'll talk about it. So at the time, we didn't know that had happened. She reported on that months later. And at first, she didn't tell us that it was Charlie that was the liaison here. At first, she said it was an anonymous friend that she wanted to protect their identity before he was killed. Then he got shot. And she later released the text messages and disclosed that Charlie was the one in the go-between for this story. And that's significant. Pink plane is still hanging out in Provo in the background. But again, another time, Cairo to Paris. And then the next day, overnighting in Paris, Paris to Omaha to Lincoln. Please note that Paris is not a normal fueling stop for planes that are going to cross the Atlantic. They would normally go to Ireland or to Iceland or to one other one. I'm forgetting what it is. I looked them all up. Not like you can't go to Paris, but the place they're going in Paris is specifically like a hub of military and intelligence operations, okay? It's kind of weird. So it does all these flights to get to America, and then it leaves, same way, Lincoln to Wilmington, Delaware, stays overnight, and then Wilmington to Cairo, okay? Comes right back a week later, Cairo to Paris, overnights, and then Paris, Detroit, Wichita, Kansas. Stays, goes Wichita to Wilmington, stays a little bit, and then Wilmington to Cairo. Stays several days in Wilmington right there. And this is the same piece right there. So we're seeing a pattern. They always fly Cairo to Paris. They always stay overnight in Paris. Then they take a roundabout way. This time it's Paris to Minot to Provo for the first time we've seen so far. And then Provo to Wilmington, Wilmington to Cairo. So they always like to leave by going to Wilmington, Delaware on the way out, where we have this weird French hangar. And they always fly to Paris before. And they always spend the night in Paris, and they always spend the night in Wilmington. And they always do more flights than you'd think you would need for a maintenance stop. But I am not an expert, and I would love for an expert to give me a rational explanation for this. It's possible that there's a very normal explanation for these flights, or maybe there's an explanation for some of the flights, and then others are more suspicious. Who knows? I don't know. But the pink plane turns on now. And we're not going to get totally in the weeds about it. Maybe we will on another stream I did on Twitch. But this pink plane that has been in Provo, ostensibly getting serviced for like 8 months, it turns on. And this week, on the 10th of April, it does a Provo to Provo flight for 55 minutes. So it's a 55-minute long flight where it takes off from Provo and then lands back in Provo at about 3:16 p.m. local time. But on the data chart, it says that it lands before it takes off. But it only has that error. Is this? Yeah, this is my plane right here. It only has that error on the local times chart. And it's very hard to look at these because of all the numbers. But here is the time that the transponder says that the plane took off for this flight, 3:16 p.m. Provo time. And here is the time that the transponder says that the plane landed after the flight, 3:11 p.m. Provo time. Now, if this time is 1 hour off, that actually lines up perfectly with a 55-minute flight. 3:16 to 4:11 p.m. is exactly a 55-minute flight. But if it landed back in Provo, it's on Provo time. These are all in local time. But then when you go and look at the UTC time codes chart, that error doesn't exist. It takes off at 9:16 p.m. UTC, and it lands at 10:11 p.m. UTC, which is a 55-minute flight. So maybe it's an error in Flight Radar's data, but Flight Radar is a pretty professional service as far as I can tell. I'm paying $500 for this service. So is this a glitch in their data, or is this evidence of something weird with this flight? I don't know. And I'm not saying I do. I'm saying I don't. And I would love for someone with way more context that is a professional at this kind of shit to help us understand what this weird frickin' flight is. Because ostensibly this plane has been getting work done in Provo for like a year. And obviously this would be a test flight. It's like we finished our work, and I assume it would be take it for a spin. But if you take it for a spin and then the transponder is all fucked up and it says you landed before you took off, you'd think you'd want to fix it and take it up again to make sure it was good if you spent a whole year working on it. But they don't do that. No more test flight stuff. They just get up and fly to Goose Bay. You know that place up in Quebec that used to be a military base where during World War II, the Canadian Air Force trained all their pilots before they went over. It was a nuclear base, the first place where America put American nukes on Canadian soil. Kind of interesting. And remember, we were talking about these French legionnaires, these French foreign legionnaires that sometimes get Canadian passports. So this is not the only Goose Bay appearance. It happens frequently from here on out. But this one decided to leave Provo to Goose Bay, spend the night, and then Goose Bay to Paris. Then, after a whole day and a half in Paris, then it flew to Cairo. Kind of weird. And again, the same pattern with the green plane, Cairo to Paris overnight, and then Paris, Minot, Provo. Provo, Wilmington overnight, Wilmington, Cairo. So now, once all this stuff with Charlie and with Candace reporting on Brigitte happens, suddenly we're seeing more and more flights to Provo. Okay? And we're seeing flights to Goose Bay. Go through May, we see more. Cairo to Paris, Paris to Goose Bay, to Minot, to Provo. Cairo to Paris, to Minot, to Provo. Stays in Provo for a long time. Then this red one comes in, Cairo to Paris, to Goose Bay, to Minot, to Provo. That's a lot of stops. Some very important stops. And then it stays for a long time in Provo. Maybe getting work done. And to be clear, in previous years, there are flights to Lincoln, Nebraska. In this year, there are flights to Lincoln, Nebraska, where the main maintenance facility is, right? Where they might be getting work done. But then this red flight that's staying in Provo for all this time, it turns on for 1 minute, apparently, on the 10th of June at 2:40 p.m. Utah time. On for 1 minute, turns back off, allegedly. Maybe they're using their communication systems. Who knows? On July 1st, Macron sends another legal threat. Doesn't do anything. It just makes Candace go harder. And then TPUSA Florida event happens. And the Google trends of people searching for all these weird things in Israel, things like Mikey McCoy's home address, things like the literal exact address where the rifle would be found a month or 2 later, 2 months later. All these Google trend searches in Israel and some in DC intensify bigly right after the TPUSA Florida event, and then a blue plane appears. Cairo to Paris, Paris to Omaha to Lincoln, stays in Lincoln, and then Lincoln, Wilmington, and then stays overnight to Cairo. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe they're just getting maintenance done. Genuinely, I don't know. Macron drops the lawsuit on the 23rd. That only emboldens Candace more. Then we get the yellow plane coming back. The Hamptons meeting happens on the 4th of August. The blue plane comes back near the end of August. Same thing, through Paris, and it stays in Lincoln. And then the UVU event gets announced shortly after it leaves. Probably a coincidence. I mean, it's not like it's the day after or anything. And now we are to September. And the blue plane comes back, and the red plane has been here all this time. All this time. Okay? For like 3 months plus. And on the 3rd of September, the blue plane goes Cairo to Paris, stays overnight in Paris, and then it goes Paris to Minot to Provo, and it stays. Charlie texts the group chat on the 8th and says, I've got no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause. On the 10th, he gets shot. And that morning at 7:14 a.m. local time, the blue plane flies Provo to Wilmington. And then the next day in the morning, it flies Wilmington to Cairo. On the 15th of September, the red plane goes, on the 13th, it goes Provo to Goose Bay to Paris. Back out through Goose Bay. Interesting. Stays 2 days in Paris, or a day and a half maybe, and then Paris to Cairo. Voila. And they're still coming in. October, they're still coming in. November, they're still coming in. The yellow one is anyways. But that's as granular as we're going to get on that for now, okay? Just a summary of what we already knew. And now, let's talk about the new plane that Barron discovered. Oh, I did have a screenshot of what I meant by these like weird flights that have all this weird data. When they're hanging out in Egypt, their flights are clearly not flights. They're clearly some sort of secret. Okay, this is the kind of shit that you see when they're hanging out in Egypt. Okay, and they're allowed to do that over in Egypt. But I think we better have a damn good explanation for what they're doing in America when they're here. And we better be supervising them pretty damn closely, right? I would hope that we are. So enter an American plane, N315NG. Barron found this through a source that he has. I know a little bit about the source that he didn't say publicly, and I'm not going to either, obviously. But it sounds like a good source. It sounds like a very good source. And the data all checks out with what the source is saying. But the source is apparently an expert at analyzing these flights and understands this stuff a million times better than me, and was able to pick out some very suspicious patterns. Okay. I think that we're going to pop into Barron for just a second and let him give us a little bit of context here. And then we'll look at the flights. And I have actually found a whole bunch more about this just since he live streamed. And it's interesting. It ties into Tyler Robinson's mom and into Lance Twiggs' therapist and maybe into the hospital that Charlie might have gone to or didn't. We don't really know. We don't really have any evidence from the hospital that Charlie was there, aside from the testimony of a bunch of very trustworthy TPUSA people. So we'll get to that in just a second. But while Barron's on screen, we are going to bring back up the chat, since you don't need the bottom, and let him introduce it.
Just look at all these flights and see if you can find anything weird on that day that I'm not catching. Cortez is a little town in Colorado. Someone asked what Cortez was. It's a little town in southwest Colorado, and it's kind of centrally located near the Four Corners region, because this looks like a medevac plane that is centered around the Four Corners regions. And there's a lot of Native American reservations there. This creates a very repetitive out and back pattern with Cortez.
So it's a medical plane. It's a medical plane based near the Four Corners region. And it's kind of constantly flying in and out of Cortez, Colorado. And we're going to look at that on the map in a second. And his expert source clearly identified this pattern. And in looking at the data myself, even a novice like myself, I can clearly identify the same pattern. And we'll briefly look at that in a second.
As the clear home base. However, two dates are completely different. First, November 15th, 2025 is completely different. So let's go to November 15th, 2025. Notice the difference involves a flight to Scottsdale, right there. The first flight is in the middle of the night from a positioning trip rather than a medevac mission. No
Here, I'll let him say this
private
whole
charter,
thing.
and no transport to a major hospital hub. It looks instead like a private charter and ends the day back in Cortez. In other words,
Okay.
involves a flight to Scottsdale.
I got jumped.
Right there.
My bad.
The first flight is in the middle of the night from Santa Fe to Cortez. Then Cortez to Scottsdale, Scottsdale back to Cortez. The airplane starts the day in Santa Fe, not Cortez. It does a single round trip, Cortez, Scottsdale, and ends the day back in Cortez. In other words, it appears there's no patient pickup at a remote strip and no transport to a major hospital hub. It looks instead like a private charter or a repositioning trip rather than a medevac mission. No other day in the entire multi-month log shows this pattern.
You get that? So it's a plane that is always going to a remote airstrip or taking off from Cortez, ostensibly with a patient that has suffered an injury, a life-threatening injury that needs to go to a major hospital for trauma care. Because normally it'll take off from somewhere kind of remote in its region and fly someone to a major hospital. And this flight, this pattern of this section right there on November 15th, didn't match that at all. But the next pattern on September 10th, September 9th and 10th, is even more obvious and surprising.
Here's the second anomaly. And this is September 10th. This is the day Charlie Kirk passed away. So let's go down to September 10th and let you look at this with me because I think this is pretty important.
And this plane flies a lot.
This is the September 10th.
There's a lot of data
right
in here.
Look how many flights there are on September 10th. It starts actually the evening before, but we'll get there. Second, the block of September 9th and 10th, 2025 also stands out as extremely unusual. In fact, it's the only other multi-flight sequence in the entire log that completely abandons the normal medevac pattern built around Cortez. Here's exactly what happens from the evening of September 9th through the end of September 10th. And this person goes and says, listen, the flight starts at Phoenix and goes from Phoenix to Cortez. That could be they pick someone up at Window Rock. They fly them to Phoenix because that's a major hospital hub for some. Window Rock is the basically like the state capital of the Navajo Nation. That's where the government is. So they go to Window Rock. They pick up a patient. They take them to Phoenix Sky Harbor because there's a major hospital there. That's what a medevac does. They get you to major trauma centers. Phoenix Sky Harbor back to Cortez Muni.
So that's what we would expect to see. Go get a patient and take them to a major hospital and then go back to base, right? And then it gets weird.
And then you get a Cortez Muni to Blanding. But instead of going from Blanding on the evening of September 9th, Blanding is one of the remote airstrips where they were picking up patients over the course of this. Instead of going from Blanding to a major hospital hub like Denver or Phoenix, instead they go to Provo that night. This is the only time I could find this plane has gone to Provo.
And this is landing at 11:42 p.m. And then it keeps doing trips through the night, through like the early wee hours of the morning, into the next day, into the next evening. This is the day that Charlie is shot. Right now, he's on the night before, and then it goes into the day that Charlie is shot.
And we'll talk about that in a second. So it goes from Phoenix Sky Harbor, which looks like a patient drop-off, back to its home hub the evening of the September 9th.
And we're about to go through all this data in more pictorial detail. So I'm actually not going to have Barron explain the whole thing, and then we'll just explain it again. Barron's the shit, and if you're not already subscribed, you dang well better. But this is our plane, and this is all the data, and there's a ton of it. So this is the November 14th flights that were weird. But then you just scroll and scroll and scroll, and there's all this patterning. I highlighted that it did go to Salt Lake City once, October 17th and 18th there. But other than that, never goes to Provo. It rarely goes to Salt Lake, except for this one time it goes to Provo. So I skipped a bunch of data because there was just so many flights. And this is back on September 10th when it goes to Provo and everything in between. But this data is shitty to look at, so I figured we'd print it out and look at it as flights. And chat, I'm going to hide you again so we can see these things full screen. And we're just going to quickly walk through the timeline of what this plane does. And then we're going to do a little bit of research into who owns this plane, the company that runs this plane. And we're going to realize that it's not just that it was in Provo that might connect it to this whole situation. It's that the company that owns the plane has come up before. And it immediately set off my alarm bells. And maybe it's all coincidences. I don't know. I'm just asking experts to look at this. I'm asking our government to look at this and make sure that there's nothing suspicious going on. Okay? Because this medevac plane that already likes to take off from very remote airstrips, likes to hang out on Indian reservations where, like nothing bad or intelligence-y ever happens. Don't watch the octopus murders. September 9th. So it's too small for you to read up here probably on the top strip, but I'll read it to you. So September 9th, the day before Charlie is shot, it flies from Blanding down here underneath Moab to Provo. It lands in Provo at 11:41 p.m. I skipped the Phoenix flight. I didn't put the Phoenix flight on. That already happened earlier in the afternoon. So it lands in Provo for the first time at 11:41 p.m. the night before Charlie is killed. Then, and you can always tell where the plane starts because the yellow plane is at the start of the flight in all the images, and then it flies to the open end. Then that night, or the next morning rather, it goes from Provo back to Cortez kind of home base right next to Blanding in the Four Corners region of Colorado. It lands there at 2 a.m. So it's flying through the night, maybe loading up something in Provo, maybe dropping something off in Provo, loading up, flying back to home base. But there's, you wouldn't fly to Provo with a medevac when right next door is Salt Lake City and all these bigger hospitals. Or somewhere else, like down in Arizona, there's even bigger hospitals. Then, this same morning now, Cortez down to Prescott, Arizona, landing in Prescott at 9:22 a.m. So it spends a fair bit of time in the middle of the night out here by home base from 2 a.m. until 8 a.m. It's hanging out doing something. Then it flies to Prescott. Then at 11:03 a.m., it flies Prescott back to Cortez, and it lands at 1:05 p.m. Now Charlie has been shot. Okay? This flight happens, and while this flight is happening, like while it's halfway through this flight, Charlie gets shot up here in Provo. Then it makes a weird little trip where my data is fucked up. It flies from Blanding, or rather it flies from Cortez, its home base, just a short trip, just a 17-minute flight over to Blanding. And it takes off at 4:18 p.m. local time, and it lands at 3:35 p.m. local time, like 45 minutes before it ever took off. Which doesn't make sense to me. How did he fly backwards in time? Or does Flight Radar 24 have corrupted data? I don't know if Barron saw this problem on his data because he was using Flight Aware instead of Flight Radar 24. And I actually didn't check if the anomaly exists in the UTC chart as well as the local time chart. I'd be curious. I'll look at that. But it's a very short flight. Stops there in Blanding. And we're going to come back to Blanding. If you watch Barron's podcast, you already know who is in Blanding. But then at 5:44 p.m., it departs Blanding back to Provo and lands there at 6:40 p.m., long after Charlie's been shot. You tell me where Charlie's body was at this point, where everyone else was, where Tyler Robinson, the killer, was. The alleged killer. Let's not taint the trial here now. Then it flies back to base at Cortez, leaving at 7:10-ish p.m. and landing at 8:20 p.m. And then it flies back to Provo, leaving at 8:48 p.m., quick turnaround, landing at 9:50 p.m.-ish. Then it flies back to Cortez, leaving at about 10:20 p.m., landing at about 10:31 p.m. These are quick flights, not far, apparently. Although it says that the flight time was 1 hour and 12 minutes, and then the actual flight only took it 11 minutes. So it's the same weird 1 hour problem that maybe it's just a glitch. I don't know. And then it goes on about its normal patterns from there on out, shuttling patients in the wilderness. Okay? Kind of weird. This is the actual data. You can look it up for yourself, although you won't have access to nearly as much as me because I paid a whole bunch of money to have all 3 years of data. But on Google Earth, we are flipped around right now. So now north is north. You can see Salt Lake up here in the upper left, and you can see Provo down here by the other lake. This is the Four Corners region, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico. And Cortez is right here by all this giant wilderness area. And as a rock climber and ultra runner, I am familiar with this kind of thing where this is a hub for if someone gets hurt in the fucking mountains or anywhere in these remote regions, they get helicoptered to the plane, and then the plane takes them to the hospital as quickly as possible. So this is like a go-between stop, would be my understanding, to get people from all of this wilderness area all around it, like Mesa Verde National Park, like Ute Mountain and Black Mountain areas over here, like the reservations around it, possibly from all of these peaks over here, maybe as far as all of this stuff back here. This is deep wilderness back here, super deep. That'd be fun to go running in. They would helicopter them out to a place like this in Cortez, depending what helicopter service you called, and then that plane would fly you to a major hospital, not to Provo. Okay, so that's all pretty weird. So I wanted to know, ever since I got on the train of buyer of looking up who owns all the tampons and shit, my first question is always, who owns it? Who owns this thing? Who owns this plane? Okay? And actually, they tell us who owns the plane, but they don't tell us who owns the plane. So that's where we take one extra jump, right? So the aircraft, N315NG, is owned by Classic Air Medical. Never heard of them before. So I looked them up. Classic Air Medical. And I started with Claude and I said, can you tell me who owns Classic Air Medical, who apparently owns this aircraft with this registration number? And please cite your sources so I can follow the trail down into the darkness. It was established in 1988. All sorts of stuff that we're going to skip. Intermountain Healthcare's acquisition of Classic Air Medical was finalized in July of 2021. I recognize that name, but I didn't really remember where from. Do you recognize the name Intermountain Healthcare? It's like I've heard of that. Where have I heard of Intermountain Health? Well, we looked. And you can find on Intermountain Health's own website their own statement from July of 2021 about their acquisition of Classic Air Medical. And their deal will enhance access to care and health services for rural communities in the Four Corners region around Cortez, is what I added. They've got stuff about their flight and ambulance services. These are the guys you don't want to call if you're going on a hike. So, we'll get to Phil in a second. Remind me to come back up to the top here, guys. So, it's important to note that Intermountain Health is one of the biggest healthcare providers in the region. Okay, so this might just be a coincidence, but the company that owns the plane that's doing this weird, suspicious shit all through the night leading into Charlie's murder and seems to be ferrying things back and forth from Provo all through the night and day of Charlie Kirk's murder. Well, it turns out that Tyler Robinson's mother, Amber, was a certified social worker employed by Intermountain Care Coordination, LLC. Tyler Robinson's mom works for a company owned by the same company. But wait, there's more. It turns out, where's my other piece? Is it here? It's in this article somewhere. Lance Twiggs. Where are you, Lance Twiggs? Maybe I just need to go back to the original article. Oh, no, that's my Alexander Benale. Pardon me, friends. Pardon me. This is bro. Where did it go? I'm pretty sure it's in this article because it turned out that Lance Twiggs' therapist that he was getting his drugs from is also right here. His roommate, Lance Twiggs, is now an important figure in the investigation. This investigation has exposed a complex web that includes Intermountain Healthcare and Arnold Ventures, private philanthropy, heavily involved in funding behavioral health programs through Intermountain Healthcare and the justice system. He's facing aggravated murder charges. Utah Governor Spencer Cox must explain how Amber Robinson's employment and responsibilities connect to state-run behavioral programs, including referrals for transgender care through Intermountain Health. Specifically, okay. So they're asking the question. My bad. Did Robinson's mother have any connection to the reported gender-affirming hormone therapy being taken by her son's partner, Lance Twiggs? Okay. So my bad. I misunderstood that. But that's kind of weird. Intermountain Health also owns a bunch of the hospitals in Provo, but not Timpanogos. You know, the hospital where Charlie was allegedly taken, but they deleted the camera footage of him. And Candace seems to have reporting of people saying that he's in the system at a different hospital and all this random shit. So I just thought that was a little interesting, that Intermountain Healthcare is owning this weird plane, roundabout way, that's doing all this weird shit in the middle of the night, and they are just turning up in other places. And maybe it's just a big coincidence because they're the biggest healthcare provider in the area. But who knows? Barron also pointed out, he's like, what's in Blanding? Why is it stopping in Blanding right next door to its home base in Cortez? Why did it go to Blanding and then go to Provo? And Barron dug around a whole bunch, and he found out that our boy Philly Lyman is from Blanding, just coincidentally. And you should really go and watch that section on Barron's stream because it's hilarious. Because maybe it's just a coincidence that Phil Lyman lives in Blanding, way down in the southeastern end of Utah. But his whole family basically owns the whole land that eventually became UVU. They sold their land to UVU. And I remember that when I was in Provo to go to the scene of the crime, and I got in touch with Phil Lyman before Candace kind of broke a whole story about him, I was getting in touch with Phil Lyman to see if he could help, like, be a source for me and walk me around the campus and introduce me to other people in the area. And I didn't realize how far away Blanding was, but he was like, yeah, I'll just drive up there. No problem. I can come up anytime, dog. No problem. It's like not that far. I'll just drive up. That's like pretty far, dude. That's like relatively far. I've driven to Moab lots of times. That's several hours drive. But for some reason, this mysterious plane in the middle of the night, a couple different times, went to Blanding and then to Provo and then to Blanding and then to Cortez and then to Provo and then to Cortez and then to Provo and then to Cortez. And it's a little suspicious. Don't you think? Don't you think it's a little suspicious? Right? So, to summarize, to wrap it all back together, we have credible evidence that has now been provided to the American government, and Candace said that they have confirmed receipt of that evidence, that a hit was put out against Candace Owens' life. And in that leak, it included information, apparently, about the hit that was put out on Charlie's life and who did that and who trained them to do it. And it involves the French Foreign Legion with Israeli cooperation, according to that leak. We've learned that the French Foreign Legion is the exact type of military unit and legion, battalion, I guess, I don't know, that you would want in order to conduct something like that. That they are specialists in new identities, in forged documents, in getting kind of criminal, sketchy folks with high-level military training. And they did mention snipers in the interview. We didn't watch that part. They specialize in these types of people doing covert operations all around the world. And then we're told it's Tyler Robinson. It's a lone gunman. Shut up about the whole Patsy thing. Follow the narrative. But we see all this data. People were asking at the beginning of the stream in the comments about like the flights. I'm confused by the flights. I don't really get the flights. Why do the flights matter? The flights matter because they are hard evidence. They are data that clearly shows something suspicious that might have an explanation, but it needs to have an explanation. And operations like this aren't as simple as just one random dude run up to a roof with a rifle, take a shot, run away, and it's done. This takes complex planning. It takes whole teams. It takes surveillance. It takes a network. It takes equipment. It takes evac. It takes distractions. It takes all sorts of shit. It takes contingency plans. And so you need things flying in. You need transport. And when you look at the JFK assassination, when you go deep on the JFK assassination, you learn that there was this convergence of cars on Dallas and this convergence of planes and people and assassins and hitmen on Dallas on that day. All these different assets. And there was a meeting beforehand at Clint Murchison's house where a whole bunch of important people were. And it gives you this context that these sorts of things are very complex operations. They're very high stakes, and they require things like planes. And things like planes leave traces. And when you look at the traces, sometimes you can find some suspicious shit. So it looks like our boys in the cult of, shall we just say, satanic pedophiles? We'll just skip right to like kind of the fact of the matter. I'm not saying that all satanic pedophiles are in on the plot, but a lot of satanic pedophiles seem to be in on the plot. If you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I can't say what kind of pedophile. It was all the actual evidence that's not coming from the FBI, from the sources, all that evidence clearly points to the exact kind of operation that this leaker is talking about. But the Jack Posobics of the world, all the kind of like shills for the narrative, they keep on citing a bunch of evidence that the FBI gave us. It's like Tyler Robinson's dad turned him in. Show me the evidence, right? Tyler Robinson admitted to it. They found a note. Yeah, they didn't really find the note. They like found evidence that the note had previously existed, but Kash Patel did too much cocaine and he didn't really know like what the fuck happened with it. You know, it's all fed evidence. It's fed events that were being fed straight down your throat. Despite us knowing that like a 30-06 cannot do that. That's not a 30-06. We all know that's not a 30-06. There's no exit wound. There's all these inconsistencies that we knew about right away. But look at how far this has progressed and how much the internet has dug up. And how much has gotten put together. It's wild. And it really shows you the power of decentralized information, of shared information, of free flow of information, of freedom of speech, right? So it's no surprise that the primary propaganda tactic is to try to get everyone to shut the fuck up and stop listening to all these conspiracy theorists. And Candace is crazy. She's mentally insane. She needs to be institutionalized. I can tell you, as a friend of Candace that has hung out with Candace, that has hung out with her family, that knows her quite well, actually, that she's like one of the most sane people you'll ever meet. She's one of the best moms you'll ever meet. She's one of the most down-to-earth, regular, normal people you'll ever meet, especially in this industry. She's super chill, and she's doing fine. And she is still safe. I checked in with her today. I'm trying to make a habit of checking in with her every day because this shit is wild. And I know that people in the comments, lastly, are asking about that weird Instagram video of like the blacked out person with the cover, you can't see who it is, and they did the voice change, and they're like, they said they were gonna kill her on stream. That's fucking fake, guys. That is fucking fake. That is so not a real video. Do not trust that. Like, that's not a thing, okay? That is classic Fed events. If something like that happens, Candace will vet it, and she will tell you if she thinks it is real when she comes back. My money is 100% on don't trust that video. Don't worry about it. Okay. She did the right thing by going public immediately, because once it's in the public square, it's like, what are you going to do, guys? Like, what are you going to do? right? And everyone called her crazy. Everyone said they needed to see the evidence. Let me see the evidence. It's like, bro, just calm the fuck down. She'll show the evidence to the people that need to see it. And the last time that she didn't have any evidence, she waited for y'all to lie on her name for like 2 weeks, and then she gave you the text messages directly. This time will be no different. So that's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're about to jump into super chats for the last 15 to 20 minutes of the show. They're going to be a little chaotic because my thingamajig broke. But before we do that, we're going to give a closing message. We're going to roll an outro, and we're going to give us a cut point for after the stream, and then we'll come right back. We'll turn on some jams, and we'll do all the super chats. But right now is a pivotal time in American and in world history, and it's not like other times. It is Epstein files. It is Charlie Kirk assassination. It's the Donald Trump shooting. It's the JFK shooting. It's 9/11. All of these things are wrapped together by the powers, by the permanent government, by the deep state, by the cabal, by the whatever name you want to call it. And it has a certain flavor that we've all started to identify. And it's not that the dish is made of just one flavor, but when you eat the dish, you kind of just taste what it is. And we're all starting to figure out what exactly it is. And everything just seems to lead back to one place and one set of criminals, specifically criminals. They're criminals, okay? They're international terrorists perpetrating a mafia-style crime syndicate, extorting the whole world, blackmailing the whole world, threatening the whole world, straight up to the President of the United States of America. And we have lots of quite credible reporting on all these different pieces of it. And we are just getting started unraveling it. We haven't even talked about how Building 7 was obviously controlled demolition. And in order to do a controlled demolition, you need secure, high-level access to the building. And when you realize that Building 7 was controlled demolition, you pretty quickly realize that the other two buildings were also controlled demolition. And then you start to wonder who the hell had access to the buildings and would murder a bunch of Americans for the thing that happened next. And we all know who would do such a thing. And then you look around and you see a lot of evidence to support that idea. And back then it sounded crazy. These days it doesn't sound so crazy. And so when I say that this is pivotal, when I say that these planes, when I say that like one little break in this one story might be the break that cracks the dam that floods all the water out, and it's all coming out, and there's really nothing they can do to stop it short of nuking the internet. So while we still have the internet, we're going to keep free speeching, we're going to keep talking, we're going to keep hanging out, and it was a pleasure doing it tonight. Please subscribe to the channel. Definitely subscribe to Nate and Valhalla VFT. Subscribe to Real Baron Podcast on YouTube for both of them. Total legends. Their work was integral to what I just did tonight. Please like the video before you leave. And remember that America is made of Americans. And whatever country you live in, your country is made out of you and all of your friends and all of your family and your community members. And so if you're not doing your best, then your country won't be doing its best. So do your best. Drink water, eat healthy food, get your exercise, be kind to people, try to elevate your life and try to help everyone else elevate theirs too. Try to be kind, try to be a good person, because it doesn't help if we solve the crime if we're all assholes along the way and just keep the cycles going that have put us in this place. So that's it for tonight. We'll be right back after the outro to chill with the super chats. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll see you on the other side.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous... Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.
All right. I actually need to kill this super thing because it broke and it was pulling in Nate's super chats as well. Whoops. So instead, we're just going to scroll the supers like a regular person, like a real boy, and it'll just be what it is. And we'll do our best to get to all the big ones. I might have to alter our sizing here, but we'll turn on the tunes. We'll turn on the chills. Let's do slaps. Got to turn down the volume. How are we doing tonight, guys? Y'all ready to chill? Because I am feeling ready to chill. I think that volume will do the trick. Give me a second, chat, to get the supers in line here. I've got to modify it a little bit to make it fit. Boom. Boom. We're learning things. We are learning things. But I can't organize it by highest to lowest. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to scroll down and read all the 20s and above, and then we'll come back to the top and we'll get some of the other ones. Okay. But I got a lot to do tonight. I didn't even tell you guys about how I flew to Bellingham the day after. So there's this news story about this shooting in Washington, D.C. by a dude who's from Bellingham, Washington. And the chief of police over there is named Jeff Carroll, spelled just like my last name. And so I get woken up in the middle of the night by a buddy that is one of the journalists that you love to watch. And is like, yo, do you know that like your last name and your hometown is flooding all over the internet tonight? It's kind of weird. And I'm like, oh, I'm literally flying there tomorrow to visit my family for Thanksgiving. And it's supposed to be a surprise. So I haven't told them or the internet or anyone. That's a little weird. And it was kind of just a joke. It was funny, but it was like, oh, like maybe I should take some precautions. So I took some precautions, but it was no big deal. It was chill. I was fine. It was an awesome visit home. And it was wonderful to see my family. That being said, it was hilarious. And like mildly, like it gave pause for just a moment. Okay, let me pull the YouTube up here. And we're going to go down and look for 20s and above. And then we'll come back and do some of the others. Happy Max Giving. We are going Max. Thanks, Danker7241. Appreciate it. I guess I'll just like them, and that's how I'll know that I've already hit it. Fair play. Kaylee Land. Thanks for the 20. Prayers for you and your family. Stay frosty. Doing it. We appreciate your prayers. I'm very fortunate to have such a wonderful family. Very, very lucky. And Lucia with the 30. 5149 James Lee has a YouTube short showing the suspect's name being Google searched in DC a week before, as well as the early morning of the shootings. 5149 James Lee is a great channel. James is the man. I'm a personal friend of his since starting my channel. I met him through TikTok and all that. Hung out with him in person multiple times, and he's a freaking rad dude to hang with. He's hilarious. He's funny online, but he's like almost even funnier in person because he's so subtle. And I actually forgot to report on that whole piece of the story because I was so excited to get to the other stories that I forgot to show all the Google searches for this dude's name, the shooter in DC. He was Google searched days before and the night before a whole bunch of times. But real quick, there's something that I need to clarify for people because TikTok does not fucking understand how the Google search thing works. So TikTok, I got to clear something up for you, okay? I got to clear something up for you. TikTok.
The Washington, D.C. shooter's name was Googled 23 times from Israel the day before the shooting. But wait.
That's not actually what the tool is. That's not how it works. Love you and appreciate you. You're doing great work, I'm sure. But the tool is not telling you the number of Google searches. Barron has explained this. I've explained this. Several people have explained this. And it's an understandable mistake. I'm not trying to call people stupid. And it's not just this gal. Lots of people all over TikTok are making this mistake because they're seeing this tool for the first time. The tool, when you look at Thomas Crooks, for example, whatever date range you're looking at, in this case, it's the last 12 months, it aggregates a bunch of search data and generally shows you which day was it searched the most. And then it assigns that to 100 as 100% of the biggest day of searching. And then all the other numbers are percentages of that big day. So it's not that Thomas Crooks was Googled 26 times on July 13th to 19th. It's that Thomas Crooks was Googled 26% of what it was on this date range right there. Okay. So just a little clarification. But it is kind of interesting to see that Thomas Crooks was Googled a shitload right around when Charlie Kirk was shot. Makes sense. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick. And huge shout out to Andalusia for giving a huge shout out to James. James is the absolute man. 5149 James Lee does amazing journalism, and he's way more diligent at being constantly doing stories than I am. So yeah, definitely check out James and his channel. He's on X, he's on TikTok, he's on Instagram and YouTube. He's got all of it. He's awesome. He's a Breaking Points contributor too. Pimbelama with the 31. Could the Egyptian planes be fitted with military tech, radar scramblers, maybe something that sends a ping, making it look like in an hour behind or ahead of its actual time, also pick up or drop off of extra stops? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could be anything. I'm certainly no expert to know. I mean, and if they're working with the Israelis or with the CIA, the sky is kind of the limit on tech that is not even disclosed to the public yet. Like, I don't know if it's possible to like spoof a transponder and have it appear like the plane is somewhere that it's not, or at a time that it's not. There is evidence. We do know that the CIA has sort of like obfuscated its flight data before when they were trying to fly prisoners to torture sites, and they didn't really want the whole international community to know about that or the torture sites. Then there was a big investigation into it, and it turned out that they were fucking spoofing their flight data sort of to hide their terror black sites. So there's some precedent for that. We don't really know what kind of tech they might have. And the gal that does the plane videos, who I'm forgetting her name, unfortunately, I got to pull up her name because Glamham Radio. Glamham Radio has been doing some awesome work on this. I would love to talk to her in the future and learn from her, get a sense for what her background is. But she gives some options for ideas of tech like this that might be going on. So thanks, Pimbelama. Sherman with the giant 100. Louis Rosensteel and David Rosenberg connection with Russell Simmons and the Flex card. I don't know what you mean by the Flex card. But yeah, Louis Rosensteel, deep mob line figure in the liquor industry. David Rosenberg, I'm not actually as familiar with. Russell Simmons, I mean, they roll together. It's just a tribe, you know. There's all sorts of connections to find. And you go down the rabbi hole, and pretty quick you're at a bar mitzvah. And Jewish people, I love you. I'm just making Jew jokes. Y'all know the ones that I'm talking about. Hayla Graham, thanks for the 20. Baze sent me. Happy birthday, Baze. Baze is based. Starts next week. Hell yeah. Happy birthday, Baze, if it's your birthday. I saw Baze throw in a super chat here too at some point. Baze is the shit. He makes awesome music. And he's always hanging out big up in the stream. Love him. James Carlin, 1930 with the 20. Real Baze sent me. Hey, happy birthday, Baze. Baze is on something here. Baze is a strategy man. Baze knows how to big up his channel. If Baze keeps playing this game, we're going to have to like pull up his channel on the stream or something like this. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you got to respect the hustle, dude. Like when someone like knows how to play the game, you kind of just have to like respect the game, right? You kind of just have to respect the game. And sometimes that game is being played by people like Real Baze, dog. And bro needs more subscribers. Come on. Let's get this man some subscribers. He makes dope, hilarious music that I don't know if I'm allowed to play on stream. Because, Payback. Now I think we just gotta get rid of APAC. Yeah. Based music that I think might have some copyright issues if I play it all on stream. I don't know. I should message Baze and find out about that. Because if I can, then we're freaking off to the races. I paid. Oh, that's sorry. I gotta do the 20s first. Here's to 17K, my bro. So sick. Congrats. Thanks, homie. Yeah, we had so many people hanging out. We had over 20K people hanging out live with us tonight. That's wild. Huge shout out to Nate and Valhalla VFT for sending his whole stream over here. But yeah, it was a huge stream. It was dope. Really appreciate you guys all watching. Thank you for all of your hard work, Ian. Love watching your work. Praying for Candace and you. Keep up the great work. Girl from 99. Thanks, Girl from 99. Hey, Girl from 99, if you mean you were born in 99, you are well positioned for one of my best life goals, which is to live in 3 different centuries. I was born in 92, so I have to live to 109 to live in the 1900s, the 2000s, and the 2100s. But you're like right there. But of course, I remember the 90s and you don't, so I kind of had the advantage there. But shout out to you. Thanks for the dono. Appreciate it. 10, 50. Dang, thank you. It's obvious that you put in work to making sure you've got the facts and receipts. My mother owns American Patriot Ltd. Her and my father make the clothing themselves. Family owned and run. I'd love to get you set up with a free hoodie. We do custom. That's awesome. Sick. You can email me. You can find that email on my website. I don't like saying it out loud on stream because then I get a bunch of random emails. But you can find it on my website and you could email me. And we could arrange some free shirts. They'd have to be pretty. I mean, they have to be comfy because I love it. If you can't tell, I love this hoodie. I wear it all the frickin' time. But I'm always down to rep cool American-made gear. So thanks for the shout out. Susan Perez, thanks for the 20. Appreciate it. Total legend. Real Bays with the 50. France also had strong connections to the Epstein operation. Big time. Big time. Jean-Luc Brunel plus many others. Ghislaine and all 7 of her siblings were born in France. This is a great point. And they mingled with all the royalty over there, all the nobility. Epstein had residence in France. He did indeed. Not to mention Jean-Luc Brunel. There are a lot more connections than people realize. You're absolutely right. And it is no coincidence that the Rothschilds, one of their main seats of power is France. And it has been for a very long time. And France is very much a quiet empire doing very dark shit all around the world with their fake passport special forces guys and other things. Thanks, Bays. You're a legend. Huge shout out and happy birthday. If it's your birthday, Bays, happy fucking birthday, man. And if it's not your birthday, happy birthday, man. I love having regulars and homies in the chat that are hanging out all the time. Real Bays sent me. Happy birthday, Bays. I can't believe I never saw this show before. Snap, subscribe. Thank you, Ian. Bays is based. I don't know if Bays has a whole bunch of bot friends or if Bays has a whole bunch of homies, but I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out and thanks for hyping the stream up. I think you guys should be donating to Bays for his birthday, not to me. Where'd that go? It was 700 or something. 700 salt shakers? I don't know what that means. But CRC, thanks for 700 CRCs. Czech Republic coroners? I'm just making shit up. I don't know. Appreciate it. 2,500 of them. Ian, your work is important. You are a great friend to Candace. Stay safe. If you ever come to CR, Czech Republic, yeah, hit me up. I would love to meet you. Thank you. I won't be flying to Europe anytime soon, but hopefully someday I can. And yeah, I would love to meet homies over across the pond. And of course, I'm a good friend to Candace. I mean, beyond like I owe a great debt to Candace for the kindness that she showed me and for the way that she helped my career. I'm obviously in her like debt for that. But she's just a good friend. She's a great person. And I would stand by her even if she hadn't helped my career, just because she's a badass and she's good. She's a good person. So, gotta remember to do this. Liberty Love Rock, $30. Thank you. No one is taking this threat on Candace seriously. Given what we know about governments and evil in the world, why and what can we do? A ton of people are taking this threat on Candace's life seriously. It's just that all the big establishment Twitter shills are trying to make it look like everyone thinks Candace is crazy. But it's just a fucking psyop. Everyone is taking Candace seriously. Everyone is listening to Candace. A lot of the people in the government might not be, but I bet there's a few people in the government that still have a heart and a soul, and I bet there's a few of them that are. And what we can do is keep on the pressure. Stay loud, stay commenting, stay trolling the trolls on X, troll all the shills, watch the reporting, get on the story, do reporting yourselves, investigate things, post information, genuine information, vet things. Because the more attention we pay to this story and the Epstein story and Candace's story, Charlie's story, the more we all watch it. Attention is the thing that you can't fake. They can't force you to look. That's the thing about teaching that I always knew, is that kids aren't paying attention to their teachers anymore. They're paying attention to this shit. And so it's whoever's in this shit, that's who is actually teaching our children. And so I knew back when I was teaching that if I really wanted to teach, if I wanted to have anything to do with the future of teaching, it's in here. And I had to be in here, because you can't force attention. And where attention flows, everything grows. So keep paying attention and keep the pressure up. Thanks for the dono. Whoa, we're jumping down to a giant dono. Damn, Andrea L with $200 dono. Love you and what you're doing. Please stay safe. I absolutely will. I'm very careful when I travel. I'm very careful when I drive. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything risky. I don't even rock climb anymore or anything like that. And I keep my head on a swivel. I got a dog, and I got my Second Amendment well taken care of. So there is no reason why anything should ever befall me. Okay. So thanks for the support. Thanks for looking out. Thanks for the prayers. Cabin fever season. Thanks for the Canadian bucks. Ehud Barak was seen in Halifax, Canada on November 22nd at a private meeting in a local restaurant, possible attending International Defense Security Conference. Look that flight up. Def Not Air Canada. We're taking a photo of that. I'm going to see if I can verify that. Don't trust, verify. So I'll look into that and see if I can scoop up what you're talking about there. That's an awesome tip. Thank you. Thank you for the dono, and thank you for the tip. Huge $100 dono. Thinking Bigger podcast, $100. Relaunching my show in a few weeks. You down for an interview next time you're in San Diego? I record at Content Factory San Diego. Kevin Faley. Dude, sick, man. Let me take a screenshot of that real quick. I don't get down to San Diego nearly as much as I would like, but I do have some other homies in Sandy that I want to come visit, and I do love that city. So I'm definitely open to it. Let me just really quickly type this in. My hand was one row up. Thinking Bigger podcast. It might not be up here yet, right? Oh yeah, it is. Cool. Sick, dog. You got a subscriber. Hell yeah. Stoked to see what you put out. Have fun with it, dude. Don't take it too seriously. Treat it like a craft and do as best as you can and do good. But don't take it too seriously. Have fun. It's a long grind. I was very lucky and I grew very fast. I think it's a long grind. So stay with it. And it's good to have you here. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the dono. And I'm just going to do, it's late. I still have to move out of my house tonight after this. So I'm going to do 3 more supers with a quick scroll random stop. Okay. Roll that beautiful something. Isn't all of this, the last 2 decades or so of major events in the Bible and talking about it being close to the end of times? I think I'm hearing faint sounds of trumpets. Hey, I'm not well versed in the entirety of the Bible to really know. And it is crazy times. It's crazy times. Personally, I don't like to give up any autonomy over what's happening to prophecy or to God or to obviously we are human. And obviously, whatever God or the universe or whatever it is that you believe, whatever it's going to do, it's going to do. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't fight for good. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your best. It doesn't mean that you should just trust the plan, right? The whole point of the plan is that we're all a part of the plan. So, and I'm not coming at you for that. I'm just kind of riffing. But yeah, it's crazy times for sure. I'm with you, dude. Time to step up. One more scroll. McCoy's bro died flying 10 days after CK tail number N32SZ. McCoy's brother died flying 10 days after Charlie Kirk? No way, dude. We would have heard about that. I don't believe you. I'm going to try to verify that. If I can find that, that would be crazy. Are there women in the Foreign Legion? Probably not. Let's be honest. Women, we love you. You're so good at so many things. I mean, maybe they have some female divisions that are especially designed to do female stuff, but women aren't going to be like killing special operators and overpowering people with their strength normally. You know, and most of you would be happier not doing that. Most of you would rather do fun things, you know? But special operations, special forces, intelligence has a long history of using women, mostly for some pretty fucking dark shit. And women are super devious when they're dark. And so they make great spies. So it's very possible. I don't know. Maybe we could ask Taylor. Thanks for the dono. I appreciate it. We'll do one more. Boom. Andalusia. Oh, we already read that one. One more. Thank you for all you do. It's needed. Thanks, Autumnwood. I appreciate you. Thanks for the dono. Means a lot. And to everybody else that donated, but I didn't get to your super chats, I love you guys, and I really do appreciate it. If it wasn't already almost midnight and I didn't have to be out of this Airbnb tomorrow morning, I would read more of them. But I really do appreciate you guys all being here. I appreciate you all hanging out. This was a huge stream, kind of a milestone for us, and it feels like the case is starting to crack open. It feels like collectively, with everyone's work together, we are actually getting somewhere. And we might actually get to answers, and we might actually force some sort of accountability or change. Kind of a long shot. I'm not holding out on it. I'm not getting my hopes up too much, but stay praying, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive, and we'll all do our best, right? That's it for tonight. That's all. Be sure to sleep good. Tell someone you love them. Do something nice for someone. And if you want more streams this week, I'm sure I'll be doing lots of them over on Twitch. Twitch.tv/cancel Ian Carroll. And I will see you here on YouTube next Friday. Good night.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous... Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse